Nearly 1,000 pounds of enriched uranium, 72 ships redirected by CENTCOM, and Israel striking South Lebanon the day after a ceasefire extension. The squeeze on Iran talks is countable now. This is Iran War Daily. Today we've got three things running at once. What a uranium handover would actually look like, what CENTCOM's shipping count is really saying, and what a Lebanon strike the morning after a ceasefire extension does to every informal understanding in the region.
And Pakistan's foreign minister is the one announcing 31 people freed from seized ships. Not state, not CENTCOM. That routing detail alone is worth an hour.
Let's start with the uranium.
Okay, so everybody keeps saying the deal hinges on Iran handing over its enriched uranium. But what does that actually look like on the ground? And why wouldn't that just solve the whole thing?
It's a fair question, and the scale alone is striking. The U.S. estimates Iran has nearly 1,000 pounds of highly enriched uranium. Not quite weapons grade, but not far off, per NPR's reporting. First problem is moving it. That is a complex, radiation hazardous operation, and experts and former officials told the AP it would be risky and slow, even if everyone cooperated, which they don't in an active conflict zone. As for where it goes, that's still being negotiated. Russia took Iran's enriched stockpile under the 2015 JCPOA, and a similar third-country transfer is the model being discussed, but no destination is confirmed. Then there's verification, and that's the IAEA's lane. Safeguards inspections, chain of custody accounting, the whole thing. But per the IAEA's own monitoring page, Iran has not been in full compliance, so inspectors can't just rubber stamp a handoff without restored access. And that's the real reason a transfer alone doesn't settle this. As Al Jazeera reports, the U.S. and Iran are still fighting over whether Iran keeps any enrichment capability at all going forward. Because even if the stockpile leaves, the centrifuges and the knowledge stay.
So you're saying Iran could hand over every pound it has today and still be months away from a new batch? What's the actual timeline here?
Exactly. And that's why the length of any enrichment ban is the other live argument in the talks right now, per Al Jazeera's reporting. Hand over the stockpile, sure, that buys time. But how much time depends on what Iran is allowed to keep spinning. Watch whether negotiators can actually land a verifiable long-term freeze. Because without that piece, a uranium transfer is a down payment, not a settlement. Europe says writes,
U.S. Central Command said American naval forces have redirected 72 commercial vessels and disabled 4 ships during maritime blockade operations targeting Iranian ports, as tensions around the Strait of Hormuz continue to disrupt global shipping and energy markets.
CENTCOM put an official number on the blockade Thursday. 72 commercial vessels redirected, 4 disabled, straight from a public statement on X. That's up from 65 redirected the last time we had a CENTCOM figure. So 7 more ships in roughly 48 hours, and the count is still climbing.
72 redirected, 4 disabled. CENTCOM is advertising this now, not leaking it. That's a deliberate choice. And redirected and disabled are doing very different jobs there. One is a reroute, one is a boarding or a hull breach. 4 disabled out of 72 total also tells you something about how often ships are actually testing the cordon versus just complying.
The disabled number hasn't moved. It was 4 on May 13th. It's 4 today. So whatever the threshold is for disabling a vessel versus redirecting it, CENTCOM seems to have held that line even as the redirect count keeps rising.
And nobody's named the 4. Were they IRGC affiliated? Flagged out of a third country? Lloyd's war risk desks are pricing something right now, and 4 unnamed disabled vessels still isn't enough to know what.
From Arab News.
Beirut. Israel launched a series of airstrikes on southern Lebanon on Saturday, despite the extension of the truce between the two countries. Israel says it is targeting Hezbollah, but the strikes were preceded by an evacuation warning covering 9 villages.
Israel struck at least 5 villages in South Lebanon on Saturday. The NNA is the source, and one of those villages is more than 50 kilometers from the border. The ceasefire extension was agreed Friday. That's less than 24 hours between signing and striking.
9 villages got evacuation warnings before those strikes. That's not a targeted Hezbollah raid. That's a ground prep pattern. And the NNA is reporting a new displacement wave towards Sidon and Beirut, which means the extended truce is basically meaningless to the people living under it.
This ties right back to something we've been tracking since the Saudi back-channel thread. How durable are informal de-escalation understandings when one side keeps striking? The Lebanon ceasefire is a written extension, not a back-channel nod, and it still didn't hold 24 hours.
And Hegseth was calling Iranian proxy capacity combat ineffective. But if it were truly broken, Israel wouldn't need to strike 50 kilometers north of the border the morning after a ceasefire renewal. Degraded and done are not the same thing. Entire is the proof.
Modern.az writes,
31 people on Iranian ships seized by the U.S. have been released. 11 of them were Pakistani citizens, and 20 were Iranian citizens. Modern.az reports that this was stated by Pakistan's Foreign Minister Ishaq Dar. The Foreign Minister's statement notes, 31 people on ships seized by the U.S. on the high seas have been returned via Singapore.
Pakistan's Foreign Minister Ishaq Dar, not state, not CENTCOM, is the named source on 31 people returned from U.S.-seized ships. 11 Pakistani, 20 Iranian, routed Singapore to Bangkok to Islamabad. Dar says all of them are healthy. That's the first on-record crew condition confirmation we've had from any of these seizures.
Pakistan is doing the handoff. Not the U.S., not Iran, Islamabad. Singapore as neutral ground, Bangkok as a waypoint, and Pakistan pledging to get the 20 Iranians home. That's a lot of diplomatic infrastructure for a crew transfer Washington apparently didn't want to announce itself.
Worth separating the two tracks here. Iran's UN envoy Iravani has already told the Security Council this is state piracy and a gross charter violation. He's asking for collective action. The crew walking off a plane in Islamabad healthy is a real fact. Whether it changes Tehran's legal posture at the UN is a different question.
And Pakistan just put its name on brokering the return of Iranian nationals from U.S. custody. Islamabad is already stretched. IMF program, India tensions. What does it cost them to be the quiet intermediary every time Washington and Tehran need a back channel that neither side can officially own?
If Iran War Daily helps you stay oriented, please subscribe wherever you're listening. And if you have a moment, leave a review. It really helps other people find the show. You'll find links to every story we covered today in the show notes, so if one caught your ear, you can take a closer look there. That's Iran War Daily for today. This is a Lantern podcast.